booktube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner, and it's time for a review. And I will be reviewing The Visitors by Sally Beauman. I just finished this book today. I have not published a review on Goodreads or Storygraph. I might do it today, I might not, but either way, I want to do it before our trip, so I don't forget all about the book. And not that this book is forgettable. It's just over. I will be very focused on London and what books I might buy there, hopefully. But anyway, this is a historical fiction taking place mostly in the 1920s and 30s. But it does start in present day. I don't know what the timeline is what the present timeline is. But it's about our main character, Lucy, who is an old lady now, and she is approached by this man who is Dr. Fong, who is doing a documentary on the discovery of King Tut's tomb in Egypt. And she was there when the tomb was uncovered. So he's asking her about it and seeing if she remembers, but she doesn't want to talk too much about it. It just brings back really sad memories. So we are looking back. So she goes back to 1922, where she was by the woman where she was taken. She was being taken to Egypt by her. I don't know if she would be considered, I guess, her governess, Miss Mackenzie, to explore Egypt. And while there, she crosses paths with several the very archaeologists who are trying to find this tomb, and also makes friends with one of the children, with one of the daughters, with the daughter of one of the archaeologists. She forms a friendship with Francis and Winlock. And it's about that time and what happened during those events, and how there were some things that happened during that time, that were a little bit morally questionable, and it's all about her getting mixed up and all that, and her thoughts on it, and her experiences, what she remembered, and everything. So this book does one of my favorite tropes in historical fiction, which is stories where you see the main character as much older now and looking back on her youth, or in this case childhood, and remembering those experiences. And I think it's just so interesting to a character recalling what happened all those years ago and answering the question of, do they regret it? Their actions during that time, do they regret, or do they not regret it? How do they feel about those memories? Do they leave a bad taste in their mouths, or is it sad to think about, and like learning how they feel about it now, because hindsight's 20/20, as they say. It's really fun to experience that with the character, like as they remember. It also makes this very sad, because the book does have a little melancholiness to it, because that she's looking back, and her character is she's not entirely alone. Like, one of the last people, there's another person from her past that's still in her life, but she's an older woman now, and she knows she will probably be dying soon, and she's haunted by the memories of that time when she went to Egypt, and her relationships with her friends, with the archaeologist, with her stepmom, which plays an important role as well. She has a new stepmom that comes into the middle of the story, and how these people impact her and influence her in her life, and her thoughts on the expedition. And there's actually one point where she is asked by some of these archaeologists, who are adults, and she is 11 years old at the time, asked what are her thoughts on this, on them digging up these tombs and exploring and finding all this treasure. And for her, she actually realizes that she's kind of sad about it. She feels bad, and she almost wishes that these tombs weren't glorified, that these kings weren't given all this treasure, so that people would be tempted to dig it all up and take it. Like, she secretly wishes they could be left alone, and it makes her sad. So, and then of course you get the archaeologist point of view, where they think that she's kind of in the wrong here, and that she doesn't understand because she's just a kid. And there is one in Herbert Winlock, Francis's father, explains to them that they treat death not as an ending but as a beginning, and that they see these kings and these, that they are just going into the next life, that they're not just dying, and that for them, death is not a bad thing, it's to be glorified. So he's implying that they don't understand this culture, and that maybe what she's saying is being dismissive of the importance of this culture. So it does explore that a little bit in the perspective of these two people, that the whole idea, is it right to dig up these tombs and put all these treasures in museums and talk about them in documentaries and tell the world about the past, but then at the same time you're disrupting this person's resting place, and it should be considered sacred, and that it should be considered sacred, and that you digging up and stealing, like, in a way you're stealing the things that they were left to take with them in the afterlife. And I definitely can understand both points of view. Both, I think, are valid, and like I said, the book explores that. Also, I like how, it looks at friendship and looks at these two girls and how they both see things very differently. Like, even though Lucy is still somewhat sheltered, while you have this you have Frances, who has explored the world and, gone on these archaeology trips, and she has all this knowledge that Lucy doesn't. They are like, Frances is very much, has this kind of, even though, and she is younger, which sometimes I admit, at first I kind of forgot that she was actually younger. She has a different viewpoint and is a little bit more enlightened in some ways more than Lucy. But they have very opposing views, and because she was raised by an archaeologist, that kind of influences how she sees this whole situation and how she feels about it. And while Lucy has a completely different perspective. So I like the dynamic where they kind of, and also I like stories that look at friendships where one person is a little more dominant in the relationship, has a little bit more, overshadows the other person. The other person is quiet and reserved and just goes along with the flow, and is loyal but doesn't agree with everything. And then you have the other friend who's more adventurous and outgoing, but they're not always making the right decisions, and their decisions are biased and they're reckless, but they also are more enlightened. But at the same time, they do understand things better than the one who's more, and there's a sense of bravery to that person. And I like when you have those kinds of friendships. That's why I'm still kind of intrigued to read Ellen Ferrante's My Brilliant Friend, because I feel like it might have the kind of dynamic of friends that are opposites, and one kind of overpowers the other, or has a more outgoing personality. Again, I'm going to relate back to Bridgerton. That's how I feel like it is with Penelope and Eloise, where Eloise has the more dominant personality that kind of overshadowed Penelope until season 3, and she kind of comes out of the shadows and comes into her own and becomes a stronger person. So I like when stories, whether it's a TV series or a book, or a movie explores those kinds of friendships, I think they're always like really fun, really intriguing, and kind of fun sometimes to see. And also, it's kind of exciting to see the character that's the more shy, reserved one coming into their own and standing up for themselves, and seeing the more vulnerable side to the more dominant, the one with the more dominant personality, and like seeing their softer side, and maybe hopefully they learn, and both people learn and grow and come into their own. Let's talk about all the Egypt stuff. First of all, like books like this always in movies too, movies and TV shows, they always make archaeology look so cool and fun and exciting. And but then I've heard that it's not that fun. It's kind of boring at times. But there was a time when I wanted to be for like a second. I thought about being an archaeologist until it was pointed out to me that it could kind of be boring and it's not as fun as you think it is, as like movies and story like a stories like fiction paints it out to be. Um, but it reading books like this does allow me to imagine exploring Egypt and digging those tombs without actually going there, because I don't know if I would want to go there. Because I mean, Egypt sounds like a great place, but I don't know. Maybe one day, but I don't know if I would want to. I don't know if I would feel comfortable going to Egypt. I mean, I know that actually, I believe Terry wants to go, so I hope one day she gets that dream come true and gets to go safely. I hope she gets to go safely, but I don't know if that will ever happen. I mean, I hope it does for her. But like I said, for me, this is enough. Reading a book that takes place in Egypt, and I can live vicariously through these characters. I gotta say, I have very mixed feelings about some of the archaeologist characters, which I think because there's a stuff on the back that's like, information on these famous people, because I guess they were real, like, but it's like some of these archaeologists are kind of assholes and very self-centered, and they only use they only interact with Francis and Lucy when they need them, when they feel like they could they could benefit from using these two girls, because they're very perceptive and good at observing things, and have a lot of, and really are passionate enough that they have the knowledge. And it also gets them connections to other people, like Francis's dad is an archaeologist too, and he's involved in all this. But these archaeologists, sometimes the way they treated these girls just kind of annoyed me. I thought it was disrespectful. But still, I mean, at the same time, kind of, but again, like you said, interesting to read about these, like, people like that. I don't know what it is, but people like that are assholes, are intellectual assholes. Not those arrogant ones that are really dumb but think that they're smart, Not those, but the ones that are actually very intellectual and very focused on their discoveries and their ambitions. Those people are always very intriguing and fascinating to read about. Because you want to pick at their brain, you want to understand them, or at least I want to understand them. But then I don't like how they treat other people, because they get so caught up in their own ambitions and their own discoveries that they don't really consider other people's feelings. They only use them when they need them. And there is a relationship not just with the two, not just Francis and Lucy, but there's also one of the characters, this guy Carnarvon. He's involved in his daughter. He's the benefactor. He's the guy that's giving them the money to fund the expedition. His daughter is in love with one of the other archaeologists, but he just is totally oblivious and just ignores her and dismisses her. Only shows her affection when he thinks he can get something out of it. But he's very dismissive of her, and just doesn't realize that she might be in love with him. So, like, as I said in a review I just wrote for another book, I feel like those types of characters, you don't mind reading about them, but you don't want to necessarily fall in love with or befriend them, because then they will disrespect you. But like I said, they're fun to read about, because you kind of want to understand them a little bit better. And I think it'll be, and I always, And now, the one time I actually got a story from a character like that's perspective was Lady Oddly Secret, and in the end, um, I still liked it. I was cool with it. Like, so I don't know if I would want to read more books that are from those types of characters' perspectives. Like if we got Carter's perspective, I don't know if I would want to read from him or not. Um, but anyway, Sally Beauman, I'm really liking her writing. This is the second book of hers that I really am very immersed in her. I've gotten very immersed in both her novels that I've read. I liked her writing, like what she's explored, and how she's given, again, she's another female writer who's made sure to give voice to a lot of female characters that might not normally get a voice. Um, but yeah, this was really fun. I really like the story, and also, like I said, it made me sad towards the end because I kind of guessed what was gonna happen. It's not, not exact details, but I kind of figured I knew where things were gonna end up with Lucy and everything. And I found all the. I also really liked her dynamic with Miss Dunsire, who becomes her stepmom. I can't remember her first name. She was also another fascinating female character because she could be such a bitch and so mean and cruel and cold. But another time she showed vulnerable sides, a softer side, and she really bonded with Lucy. Even though she could be really hard on Lucy and insensitive to her, she was very tough on Lucy. But she also showed that she did care about and had an affection for Lucy. But it does get to the point where she kind of clings to Lucy a little bit and wants to keep her around all the time, like attaches herself to Lucy. Like it's the one of the relationships that she's wants to keep with her always, and Lucy just kind of she doesn't want to do that. She knows this Miss Dunsire, I don't remember her first name, is keep trying to keep her hostage, hold her close, and not let her live her own life. So that relationship dynamic is also really interesting too. Because, like I said, there is affection, but also sometimes the way she is with Lucy is a little bit a little selfish. I think she would be a great character to get more from and learn more about her story. Like, I love for Sally Bowman to make a spin off about that character. I mean, I don't know if she would, but that would be interesting to get her story from her childhood and kind of get why she is so clingy, and why there's one point in the chapter where she gets into these what she calls these very black moods, and I think she experiences depression. And I'm not an expert on it. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not trying to diagnose or anything, but I do feel the impression. I do wonder if she experienced depression, because at one point she tells Lucy that she tried to kill herself. Um, so outside of the whole Egypt storyline, that storyline was really intriguing, and I definitely want to know more about this woman and why she's the way she is. Why is her life, why she's becomes a very selfish person at times, but also a sympathetic person, a person you kind of feel for, and you kind of understand why she's kind of mean. She does what I noticed that they have that trope with female characters where they feel like they have to be hard and cruel to survive and to prove their worth. Um, like you see that in like historical fiction where a woman is like to prove that she's strong, that she's worth it, she's confident, she doesn't need a man to take care. She kind of becomes like hard and a seducer and a manipulator, but she also has her softer sides. And like you see that in modern stories that take place in modern day, where like the two that come to mind is Devil Wear Miranda Priestley in Devil Wears Prada. She is actually I got three examples of this trope, and she is a boss in a fashion company, and this main character is not that joins the company. She's played by Anne Hathaway. She's not into fashion, but she not into working for this magazine or whatever, but she needs the credit, needs it's so she can put it on her resume that she worked for this magazine because she wants to be a journalist. And this woman is very hard on her and very tough and mean, and just she is divorced from her husband, and she's like, people are scared of her. And the other example, which this woman is not as bad as Miranda, but she could potentially be if what happens in the plot of the movie isn't what happens. But I was thinking about the movie with the proposal, and Margaret is also like that. She could potentially be Miranda Priestley if she wasn't, if what happened to her in the plot didn't happen. Which is, it's a rom-com, so it's like what happens to her, she finds love and everything. And she shows her more vulnerable side to the person that she falls in love with. But she's also someone who's intimidating, hard-hearted, and is willing to fire people. You know, she's gonna, if she has to, and she's tough. And her employees are very kind of scared of her. And with exception, her Ryan Reynolds' character, her assistant Andrew. In fact, there's a quote where he says he imagined her being run over by a car. And then the fifth example, this one who is not as mean, but she's tough, and she is described in the movie as like a man, which I thought was hilarious. Like, everything everyone wants to hear is being described, being said, you're like a man, is in Kate and Leopold. With the character, with Kate, she's kind of hard on herself too, and like she's very cynical about love, and she's like very driven with her job and very focused on, and doesn't always consider, like, and just tries to keep her emotions in check. And and of course, again, it's a rom-com, so she falls in love, and it softens her heart a little bit, and she's not as much of a cynic anymore, and like, she loses her cynicism, but she also does something that a lot of them feel like they have to do, which is, I have to be tough, I have to be hard, I can't be vulnerable, I can't show my softer side. And and they become cynics about the world around them. And I feel like Miss Dunsire is very much an example, is the same example as those three characters, female characters, the whole just, I'm going to be cynic, I'm going to be, realistic, and I'm not going to, dwell on the romance, I'm not going to get caught in the romance, I'm not going to be naive. So it's really, and I find those women really interesting, because I'm curious how they got there, and you feel bad for them, you pity them. But you also, like I said, I also want to I want to get their story. I'm very interested in their story and how they got to the point where they become so hard-hearted. I mean, you can kind of get an idea why, and a lot of times it has to do with a guy. But not all, not always, obviously, but that definitely, being let down by someone you fall in love with, can influence your cynicism about the world, especially romance, obviously. But yeah, she was one of the most interesting characters too. But yeah, so I loved all the Egypt stuff was really cool, and just imagining exploring this tomb and everything. It definitely inspired me to rewatch the Mummy movies. I haven't watched the second one yet, but I did watch the first one while I was in the middle of reading this book. And then all the stuff with Lucy and her family and her relationship with not just Francis, but also Rose and Peter. That bond was really sweet and endearing. But yeah, so I guess that's all I gotta say. I really enjoyed this book. Like I said, I like the writing. I'm gonna, she has any more books, I would love to read more of her books and see what else she writes. And again, exploring Egypt without physically going there, because I don't know if I would ever actually want to literally go to Egypt. And also seeing her relationship, Lucy's relationship dynamics, and like I said, and her looking back on the past. So those are my thoughts on Sally Bowman's The Visitors. If you're interested, please check it out. It's a good, I think it's a good book. So that is my review. So if you like this review, please give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't, and you're interested in watching more of my videos. And I hope you are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to you all later. All right, bye!